Hello, and welcome to That Doesn't Make Sense. Today, we're going to talk about the Atlantic slave trade. I bet a lot of people didn't think about this. Where did it start? How did it start? What's one way that it could have started? It could have came from? Where did this stem from? The Atlantic slave trade, or transatlantic slave trade, or European American slave trade involved the transportation by slave traders of various enslaved African people, African tribes, mainly to America. The slave trade regularly used the Triangle Trade Route and the Middle Passage and existed from the 16th to the 19th century. The majority of those who were enslaved and transported in the transatlantic slave trade were people from Central and West Africa that had been sold by other Africans to Western European slave traders, while others had been captured directly by slave traders in coastal raids. Europeans gathered and imprisoned and enslaved at forts on the coast and then brought them to America. So these European slave traders, and they weren't just European, they were Northern African too. They need to fix some of this stuff. They would take land in Africa, right on the coast, just to bring you, your ancestors, not you, your ancestors back. Because I hate when people say, well, we've been enslaved. No, you haven't been enslaved. The slavery that's going on with you right now is internal. You have to break through that. You have to look at the things that are going on outside of your life, and you have to break that cycle, that legacy that has been left for you. I touched ignorance, and ignorance is dangerous. It's important to understand and know where you come from, where your people come from, and the things that have happened in the past so they don't happen. Because these things still happen. People still get picked up and traded off into slavery. Usually right now, there usually are sometimes poor people who go to these spectacular places, go swim in their waters, and then they meet up with the wrong people and get taken. And Liam Neeson is not there to come and save you. They take you, they rape you, they drug you, they torture you, and then they sell you on the streets of other countries where you can't be expedited, where you can't be freed, where most Americans wouldn't touch that soil out of fear. So these slaves were taken, and you've seen pictures, you've seen or heard stories about the daisy chains and understand that at this time Britain was participating in this. They were practicing in slavery. Britain just finally decided to start helping free slaves during the wars because they seemed like they were a good top commodity to fight in the Queen's War. You go to Britain as a black man, and there are people that are racist out there, and they will call you all kinds of things. I've heard it, I've seen it, I've experienced it. It's not everywhere, and everyone's not like this. But I'm not telling you this for you to go be angry and go cuss a white man out or cuss somebody out because of the things that your ancestors went through. If this hasn't happened to you, I'm just informing you of the things that have happened so you'll know what happened, so you can read more into it, so you can be educated. What I want to do, what my goal is to do, is not to give you a documentary. It's to give you a tiny history lesson for you to go out and find out what doesn't make sense to you about this or other subjects and inquire. Understand that American history is not the only part of history. there is world history, because the things that have happened in the world have happened with our ancestors, whether we have African, Spanish, Indian, Russian, German, or any descent, Asian descent. And the transatlantic slave trade affected everyone, but it was based mostly out in Africa. In Africa, those areas were the same trading routes, the same slave trading routes, or the same routes that they would take from some of the Vikings to these places that have been domesticated with different people. They weren't just trading, well, they started out trading gold and rice and seasoning and things like that, and then people became a top commodity. And the easier it was for you to get captured, that's what they were going for. So they would hit Africa, because African tribes were fighting against African tribes. And what's the best thing to do right now? Get in the middle of that and make some money. We got these guys that these other guys don't want, and they're just going to kill them. So instead of killing them, we're going to give these guys guns, or sugar, or candy, or whatever they eat back then, or whatever they want back then, for us to take these people and put them on a boat, dehumanize them, train them like puppies, and then or monkeys, and sell them off to the highest bidder for work, for sex, for entertainment. The transatlantic slave trade was not just something that happened to the African people. It happened to kings, queens, people of stature who were out on sea and just happened to be captured. Their ship captured, and they were ransomed. And if you didn't pay the ransom, then you were a slave forever. The Count of Monte Cristo, whoever the guy was who wrote the Count of Monte Cristo, he was a part of this. As far as he was a slave, he was ransomed. He experienced this. We can't go back into history and ask him about it. He's gone. The Portuguese in the 16th century were the first to buy slaves from African slavers and transport them to the Atlantic. In 1526, they completed the first transatlantic slave voyage to Brazil, and other Europeans soon followed. Ship owners regarded the slaves as cargo to be transported to the Americas as quickly and cheaply as possible. There to be sold to work on coffee, tobacco, cocoa, sugar, plantations, mine gold, silver, rice fields, the construction of industry. Understand that these cities, some of the cities we walk in, there's a city now, Liberty City. Liberty in Missouri, there is Little Dixie. That's a whole area. Plantations and everything still around. There's no slave work there, but there's plantations. St. Louis was built on slave labor. Like all these places in the beginning, like I've told y'all before, there's just blood. The first Africans kidnapped to the English colonies were classified as indentured servants, with legal standing similar to that of contract-based workers coming from Britain and Ireland. However, by the middle of the 17th century, slavery had hardened as a racial castle, with African slaves and their future offspring being legally the property of the owner, as children born to slave mothers were also slaves. As property, the people were considered merchandise or units of labor and were sold at markets with other goods and services. So, like I said before, in the early 1900s, Otabango was sold to a man with 2 monkeys, a snake, and a bird. The major slave Atlantic trading nations ordered by volume were the Portuguese, the British, the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the Danish. Several had established outposts on the African coast where they purchased slaves from local African leaders. Did you hear that? These slaves were managed by a factor who has established on or near the coast to expedite the shipping of slaves to the New World. The New World is America, which is not new because there were people there, but the Spanish, the Portuguese, the French, the Dutch, the Danish, and the British took these lands from the natives of these lands and moved them, killed them off, moved them, and then killed them off some more. Slaves were imprisoned in a factory while awaiting shipment. Current estimates are that about 12 million or to 12 billion Africans were shipped across the Atlantic over a span of 400 years. I'm going to tell you right now that number is way off. I'm sure there were a lot more. But I also am sure that there were Africans that were already in the Americas before slavery. And there were free men and women. The number purchased by the traders was considerably high, as the passage had a high death rate, approximately 1 to 2.4 million. That's the pirates would come in, or people who were against slavery, which I don't know if there were a lot of them at the time, or like if they had a lot of sick slaves, they would just daisy chain them off, shoot them, kill them, whatever they would, rape them while they're on a boat, rape the children. They wouldn't get a lot of children. They usually get a lot of men and women. If they had children, they would usually get children, but they have to have somebody to watch them. And children were more of a nuisance than anything. So think about that. Think about the route they took. They took the triangle. Do you know how much anger is in our ocean? Wow. Think about that. Think about the things that have happened on the ground. Like I told you, there's so much blood. So much blood. Near the beginning of the 19th century, various governments acted to ban the trade, although illegal smuggling still occurred and still occurs. In the early 21st century, several governments issued apologies for the transatlantic slave trade. Now, you know what I don't see? I don't see reparations. Now, I heard California is about to start, or thinking about starting it, but it needs to start everywhere. I'm sorry if some people don't feel like financially, they don't need that money. What are they going to do with it? What do you do with money when you have it? Think about the people in your life that you know that are suffering, that can't get ahead. That money can actually help them. Yeah, true enough. There are a lot of people. It's the pandemic right now. People ain't working right now. People ain't working right now because some of them, like, people keep saying stimulus check. No, people don't want to get sick and die. When they say that there's a disease that's killing a lot of black people, we don't want to die. We don't want to die. So no, why go to work? Why not work from home? Oh, we can't work from home. Oh, well, what I say is right now, this is the time where you can create a business and you could actually boom in your business, because people aren't on that page. They're not thinking about that anymore. You could actually open a movie theater and probably make bank playing old movies from back in the day. That was one of my ideas I wanted to do. Now I'm doing something else. I'm not talking to you about that other than what I'm doing right now. Hi, look what I'm doing. Slave market regions. So most of those were Senegal, Gambia, Upper Guinea, Gold Coast, Ghana, east of the Ivory Coast, Liberia, Congo, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Niger Delta, Cameroon, the Republic of Congo, Dominican Republic of Congo, Southeast Africa. The ethnic groups were the Bakongo, the Mande, Gabe, speakers of Togo, Ghana, Benin, the Akan of Ghana, Wolof of Senegal, Igbo, Imbundo, Oruba, and many more. I could keep going. Destinations and flags of the carriers were, like I said, we had the Portuguese, the British, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, eventually the North American, the Danish, the European. Like, man, this is worldwide. And it all stems from certain areas in Africa. Oh, but let's not forget that we did have some Southeast Asians too. Southeast Asians, you had the Indians. Think about this. Look at the old movies back in the day. And you remember seeing that one guy with the turban. You're like, why is that Indian dude is there? They had Indian slaves? Yes, they had Indian slaves back then. And they were being shipped off to Americas too. They were being shipped off. They started being shipped off to Britain. See, because India is India and Britain is Britain. But one day the British came over there and they conquered India. And they still conquered India. Like they still are a British colony. Which for me, honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. That doesn't make sense. I think all those old ways are bullshit. So if Britain owns India, then they need to stop. You remember when the British would take their less desirables and drop them off in Australia. So ancestrally, a lot of your Australians were criminals or undesirables of Britain. That doesn't make sense. Through history, there's always been this dominance of someone else. There's always been somebody that wanted to be greater or better than somebody else. And in their ways of showing it, they dehumanize these people. Money is not power. It is not right to buy someone. It is not right to go and take over some land. Russia is upset because the Ukraine right now wants to be a part of the UN. And they don't want that. So Russia wants to invade the Ukraine. And America is getting involved in that. But what bothers me about that is not the war between Russia and America. Is we go to other countries and we try to save other people from situations when we need to be doing that right here. The things that have been going on in the past are still in their own way, lightly probably, we don't know. Here, we have so many issues here in this country that we are in the neighboring countries, but we're still worried about world issues. We need to worry about what's going on here, how we're treating the people here, whether they're black, white, they're from Afghan, the Middle Eastern, whatever their religion is. We need to start worrying about that. We need to start putting more money, more time, more effort into that. Instead of what's going on in the Ukraine. What's going on in Russia? What's going on in North Korea? What's going on in the Middle East? We've spent too much time doing that. We've had leaders that have spent too much time. And why? For money. For power. You think I'm lying? Look it up. The Bush administration, Clinton administration, too many times we've had people who have just thought of themselves and the money they could make. It's written all through history. That's important for you to know. That's why it's important, so you can see the bullshit that has gone on. So, let me read the African participation in the slave trade. And I'm getting this. Some of this is from Wikipedia. Some of this is from other things. It's like scattered bits of information. You look it up for yourself. Africans played a direct role in the slave trade, kidnapping adults and stealing children for the purpose of selling them. The Africans, the Europeans that are kidnapping them, or the people that are kidnapping the Africans. Through intermediaries, the Europeans or the agents, they sold those sold into slavery were usually from different ethnic groups than those who captured them, whether enemies or just neighbors. These captive slaves were considered other, not part of the people of the ethnic group or tribe. African kings were only interested in protecting their own ethnic group. Open your eyes to what I just said to you. When you come up to me and you say, why I have this white friend and I need to be sticking with my own people. That did not matter back then. For me, what matters now is my current family. I don't want them to have harm. My family that I've grown up with, the family that I have made, the friends that I have made, I want no harm coming to them. But I don't like ignorance, so don't bring me that. But some African kings refused to sell any of their captives or criminals. So some of these people were captives or criminals. Okay, most other slaves were obtained from kidnapping or through raids that occurred at gunpoint through joint ventures with the Europeans. According to Pernille Ibsen, author of Daughters of the Trade, Atlantic Slavers and Interracial Marriage on the Gold Coast, Ghanaians also participated in slave trade through intermarriage, or taken from Italian or Spanish or Portuguese meaning, to set up house. It is derived from the Portuguese word Cesar, meaning to marry. Cesar formed political and economic bonds between European and African slave traders. It was a pre-European contract practice used to integrate the other from the different African tribe. Early on in the Atlantic slave trade, it was common for the powerful elite West African families to marry off their women to the European traders in alliance, bolstering their syndicate. The marriage were even performed using African customs, which Europeans did not object to, seeing how important the connections were. So some of this stuff was a deal. What I see and what I'm understanding and what I've been understanding through life, some things were contracted. Some things were not out of anger. That's why we have people mixed with so many different people, because their ancestors contracted this. Their ancestors made agreements with this. I'm just bringing this out to you. There's many more. There's so much more information out here with the slave trans. I want you to open your eyes to some of the things that I'm saying to you. I'm not saying that I want you to, like I said, be angry. I want you to hate. I want you to love one another. I want you to look at that person of color, of other descent, and not be upset with them for the things that have happened in the past to your ancestors, because our ancestors were doing this to our ancestors. Our ancestors were making deals with other people. That's what we have. That's why now I'm seeing, why are they asking in your application if you're African, if whatever race you are, do you have Spanish descent? European participation in the slave trade. Although Europeans provided the market for slaves, Europeans rarely entered the interior of Africa due to the fear of disease and fierce African resistance. So there were Africans that were like, hey, we're about to kill these motherfuckers that are over here, and they trying to take our people. In parts of Africa, convicted criminals would be punished by enslavement, a punishment which became more prevalent as slavery became more lucrative. To me, that goes back to the prison system. Since most of these nations did not have a prison system, convicts were often sold or used in a scattered local domestic slave market. In 1778, Thomas Kitchen established that Europeans were bringing an estimated 51,000 slaves to the Caribbean yearly, with the French bringing the most Africans to French West Indies. The Atlantic slave trade peaked in the last 2 decades of the 18th century. During the following the Congo Civil War. Now, Congo Civil War. The Congo Civil War was an internal conflict between rival houses of the Kingdom of Congo. War waged throughout the middle of the 17th and 18th century, pitting partisans of the House of Kinlaza against the House of Kimpanzu. Numerous other factions entered the fray, claiming descent from one or both of the main parties. By the end of the war, Congo's vaulted capital had been destroyed by many Congo were sold into transatlantic slave trade. So this is like I was telling you before. We fought with each other. Our ancestors fought with each other to keep their pride, their group alive, to keep their group stronger than the other group, and took the other ones and enslaved them. And they were criminals of war, so they got enslaved. They didn't have prisons back then. But we know what prisons were made for. Okay, I'm gonna stop now because I don't want to keep going any further. This wasn't meant for me to go so far to where I don't want to break it all down for you. I want you to go and find it for yourself. This doesn't make any sense. What doesn't make any sense more is just knowing this and then hearing some of the ignorant shit that comes from people's mouths when they speak about slavery or they speak about the white man or the Indian man, or like I've been places we used to go and get bootleg cassettes because we didn't have enough money to go spend $10-$20 for a cassette. So we spend $1 or $2 at the Asian. We go walk into the store on Van Brunt, 27th Street, right across the street from the police station, and this Asian couple would follow us through this tiny ass store, and they'd set all the cassettes right in the middle. So we'd be going through them, and while we're going through, and there's somebody just basically standing right there watching us. One day we had an argument with these people because I wanted to know why they're watching us, or they wanted me to hurry up or something. I had to hurry up and get out of their store. I never understood why these Asian people were always upset and treating me like they were. Or when I go somewhere and I have to deal with Indian people that were treating me like I'm garbage, like I'm less than a man, like I'm just gonna come in here and steal. Because when I was growing up, I was taught that they were slaves too. But they were just as tiny as we were. They were just as small as we were, even though according to Darwin's evolutionary chart, we are below. And then learning that and knowing that education, that miseducation, that lie was taught to these people, and their families taught it to their families, and their ancestors taught it to their ancestors, and it just kept going and going and going to present day, to where you can look at a black man or woman and you think that we're animals. You can look at us and you can say that this is this, and look at the history of it. Well, let me tell you, history is a lie. Some history is a lie. If you think that you're bigger than or better than me, or better than any man of any descent, then you're wrong. Look it up. Look it up in your history, your world history. I keep telling you, American history is just touching. And some of it isn't even correct. Look at your world history. Go to another country. Travel that country. Learn about that area. I make it a point to know everywhere I move, I learn about these areas. It's important for us to learn. It's important for us to learn so we don't make the same mistakes our ancestors make. Whether you're white, black, Indian, whatever you are, it's important to learn about your ancestry. If you have a family member that's still alive that can teach you or tell you, go and learn. If you have a chance to go to the library, learn. If you have a chance to go and look it up, learn about it. If you have a chance to go and spit some of your DNA in a tube and send it off to somebody for them to tell you about where you come from or who you were, it's important to know. There are people dying that don't know that you were kings and queens back in the day. You were someone important. Your ancestors were someone important, and they wanted you to be important, and they wanted you to live. That's why they fought the way they did for you, for your great-grandfather, for your great-grandmother, for their sons or daughters, and their sons and daughters, and their sons and daughters to be here. Get educated, people. Thank you for listening to That Doesn't Make Sense. If you have something that you want to talk about, if you have something you want me to talk about, send that to TDMS podcast at 28. I keep doing this. TDMS podcast 28 at gmail.com. Send your name, your phone number, or whatever it is. You want to talk, you want to be a part of this, then you have an opportunity to be a part of this. My name is Michael Porter, and thank you for listening to That Doesn't Make Sense.